quiet psychology of self-transformation. Why change is more than just effort. If you clicked on this video, there's a good chance you're searching for something deeper than quick tips or motivational slogans. You want real change, the kind that lasts, the kind that actually transforms who you are at your core. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear. Real transformation isn't about trying harder. It's not about willpower or discipline or grinding through the resistance. Because the problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough. The problem is that you're fighting against something far more powerful than laziness or lack of motivation. You're fighting against your own identity. Think about it like this. Changing your habits is like changing your clothes. It's surface level, it's temporary. But changing who you are? That's like trying to rewrite your DNA while you're still alive. Your entire system fights back because it doesn't recognize this new version of you. And that's where most people get stuck. They think transformation is about adding new behaviors to their life. But what if I told you that real change requires you to understand the invisible psychological layers that are actively resisting your efforts right now? The shadow self, the core beliefs you don't even know you have, the unconscious patterns running in the background of your mind like software you never installed. These are the real gatekeepers of transformation. And unless you learn to work with them instead of against them, you'll keep spinning your wheels, wondering why nothing ever sticks. So let's talk about why your identity is actually your biggest obstacle, and why that's not a bad thing. It's just the truth. There's this strange paradox that lives inside all of us. We want to change. We genuinely do. We set goals. We make plans. We promise ourselves that this time will be different. But then something fascinating happens. The moment we start moving toward that new version of ourselves, a quiet voice inside begins to whisper, "Who do you think you are? You've never been that person. Why would you be able to do this now?" This isn't about self-doubt in the way most people think. It's deeper than that. It's your self-concept defending itself. Your self-concept is the story you tell yourself about who you are. It's the internal narrative that's been built over years, maybe decades. And here's the thing. That story isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. Because to your mind, familiar equals safe. Even if familiar is painful, even if familiar is holding you back. Your brain doesn't care if you're happy. It cares if you're alive. And staying the same has kept you alive so far. So why risk it? This is what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy of identity. You've invested so much time and energy into being this version of yourself that changing feels like a betrayal, like you're abandoning the person you've always been. And in a way, you are. That's exactly what transformation requires, the death of the old self. But death is terrifying, even when it's just psychological, even when it's necessary. So your mind does everything it can to keep you locked in place. It convinces you that you're too old to change, that it's too late, that other people can transform, but you're different. You're the exception. And the cruel irony is that the more pain you've experienced in your life, the harder this becomes. Because pain, when it's repeated often enough, becomes identity. You start to believe that suffering is just who you are. That struggle is your default setting. And when you try to step into a new way of being, one where things feel lighter or easier, your mind panics. It doesn't recognize this. It feels wrong. So you sabotage yourself. You create drama. You pick fights. You make choices that pull you back into the familiar discomfort. Not because you're broken, but because your self-concept is doing its job, keeping you consistent with who you think you are. But here's where it gets interesting. Breaking free from this pattern isn't about willpower. It's about metacognition. the ability to think about your own thinking, to step outside of your mind and observe the story it's telling you, to recognize that the voice saying you can't change isn't the voice of truth. It's the voice of pattern, of habit, of conditioning. And once you see that, everything shifts, because you realize that you're not your thoughts, you're the awareness behind them. And awareness can choose. It can decide to write a new story. But before you can rewrite the story, you have to understand where it came from in the first place. And that takes us deeper into the architecture of belief itself. Most people don't realize that their current behavior isn't random. It's not just a series of bad choices or moments of weakness. It's the output of a much deeper system. A system built on core beliefs that were formed long before you had the language to question them. These beliefs were installed in childhood, before you could think critically, before you understood how the world really worked. Maybe you learned that love is conditional, that you have to earn it by being good or quiet or perfect. Maybe you learned that the world is dangerous, that people can't be trusted, that you're not smart enough or strong enough or worthy enough. And here's the thing about core beliefs. They don't announce themselves. They don't sit on the surface of your mind where you can examine them. They live in the basement, in the unconscious, running silently in the background, shaping every decision you make without you even realizing it. Think of them like an operating system. You don't see the code. You just see the results. And if the code says I am not enough, then every experience you have gets filtered through that lens. You achieve something incredible, and your mind finds a way to minimize it. You receive a compliment, and you assume the person is just being nice. You get an opportunity, and you convince yourself you're not ready. It's not that you're choosing to think this way. It's that your belief system won't let you see any other possibility. And this is where transformation gets brutally uncomfortable, because real change doesn't just require adding new beliefs on top of the old ones. It requires dismantling the foundation. It requires cognitive dissonance. The psychological tension that happens when you try to hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. And let me tell you, that tension is excruciating. Your brain hates it. It will do anything to resolve it. And the easiest way to resolve it? Go back to the old belief. Because the old belief is familiar. It's been proven. It's safe. Even if it's limiting you. Even if it's destroying you. This is why people self-sabotage right before a breakthrough. Why they quit right before success. Why they push away the relationship they've always wanted. Or turn down the opportunity they've been praying for. It's not weakness, it's consistency. The mind is trying to stay aligned with the core belief, because to let that belief shatter feels like death. And in a very real psychological sense, it is. It's the death of the person you thought you were. But what if I told you that this death, this shattering, isn't something to avoid? What if it's the only way forward? What if the fear and discomfort and grief you feel during transformation aren't signs that you're doing something wrong? What if they're signs that you're finally doing something right? This is where most self-help advice falls apart, because it treats negative emotions like obstacles, like things to overcome or push through or ignore. But emotions aren't obstacles, they're information. And if you're trying to transform, they're the most valuable information you have. Let's talk about fear first. Real fear, not the kind that warns you about physical danger, but the kind that shows up when you're about to do something that matters, when you're about to step into a bigger version of yourself. That fear isn't telling you to stop. It's telling you that you're at the edge of your comfort zone, that you're about to grow. And growth, by definition, requires you to become someone you've never been before. That's terrifying. It's supposed to be. Then there's grief. And this is the one people don't expect, because grief isn't just about death or loss in the traditional sense. It's about transition, about letting go of something that used to define you. When you transform, you're not just gaining a new identity, you're losing an old one. And even if that old identity was painful or limiting, it was still yours. It was still familiar. So you grieve it. You mourn the person you used to be, the person who struggled, the person who played small. And that grief is sacred. It's necessary. It's how you honor the journey that brought you here. But here's the key. You have to actually feel these emotions, not just think about them, not just acknowledge them intellectually. You have to let them move through your body, because emotions are energy, and energy that isn't processed gets stored. It becomes tension. It becomes resistance. It becomes the very thing that keeps you stuck. Deep thinkers understand this instinctively. They don't just analyze their experiences. They encode them with meaning. They sit with the feelings. They let themselves be changed by what they encounter. This is what psychologists call depth processing. And it's one of the most powerful tools for transformation. Because when you process something deeply, you're not just filing it away in your memory. You're integrating it into your sense of self. You're allowing it to reshape you. And here's where emotional complexity becomes your superpower. Most people think emotions are simple. You're either happy or sad, excited or scared. But real life isn't that clean. Real transformation requires you to hold multiple feelings at once, to feel fear and excitement simultaneously, to feel grief and hope, to feel lost and found at the exact same time. This ability to sit with contradictions, to embrace the messiness of being human, that's what builds resilience. That's what allows you to keep moving forward even when nothing makes sense. Because transformation isn't a straight line. It's not a clean process. It's chaotic and confusing and deeply uncomfortable. And the only way through it is to trust that the discomfort is part of the design. So if emotion is the map, then what's the destination? Where are you actually trying to go? Because if transformation is just about achieving goals or checking boxes or becoming more productive, then honestly, it's not worth the pain. Real transformation isn't about doing more. It's about becoming more. It's about shifting from a life driven by fleeting motivation to a life anchored in deep purpose. And there's a massive difference between the two. Motivation is external. It's the fire that gets lit when you watch an inspiring video or read a powerful quote. It feels incredible in the moment, but it burns out fast. Purpose, on the other hand, is internal. It's not about what you do. It's about who you are. It's about aligning your actions with something deeper, with your values, with your sense of meaning, with the kind of person you want to be when no one's watching. This is what philosophers call existential thinking, and it's the final stage of transformation. It's where you stop asking, what should I do, and start asking, who am I becoming? It's where you stop chasing external validation and start listening to the quiet voice inside that knows what matters. But here's the catch. You can't hear that voice in the noise. You can't access that deeper part of yourself when you're constantly distracted, constantly busy, constantly consuming information or content or other people's opinions. Transformation requires solitude, real solitude. Not just being alone, but being with yourself, sitting in the silence, letting your mind wander, letting the thoughts rise and fall without grabbing onto them. This is where the real work happens, in the stillness, in the space between thoughts. And I know how that sounds. It sounds like doing nothing, like wasting time, but it's not. It's the most intense psychological work you can do. Because in that silence, you're forced to confront everything you've been avoiding. all the questions you've been too afraid to ask, all the truths you've been too busy to face. And that confrontation, that's where clarity lives. That's where you discover what you actually want, not what you think you should want, not what other people expect from you, but what lights you up from the inside. What makes you feel alive? What gives your life meaning even when it's hard? And once you know that, once you've touched that sense of purpose, everything else becomes easier. Not because the work gets simpler, but because you finally understand why it matters. Now here's where everything comes to a head. Because knowing all of this, understanding the self-concept and the core beliefs, and the emotions and the purpose, that's just the beginning. The real test comes when you're standing at the edge, when you've done the work, when you've processed the pain, when you've sat in the silence and clarity has emerged. And now you have to make a choice. You have to decide if you're actually going to step into this new version of yourself, or if you're going to retreat back into the familiar. And let me tell you, that moment is brutal. It's the most intense point of the entire journey, because this is where the psychological drama reaches its peak. This is where you confront the ultimate loneliness of transformation. The realization that no one can do this for you. No one can hold your hand through this final step. No one can give you permission or validate your choice or promise you that it will all work out. You have to make this leap alone, and you have to make it knowing that once you step forward, there's no going back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you've learned. The old version of you, the one who played small or stayed safe or hid behind excuses, that person is gone, and the grief hits you all over again. But this time it's different, because this time you're not just mourning who you were, you're accepting responsibility for who you're becoming. And that responsibility is heavy. It's the weight of knowing that your life is in your hands, that the choices you make from this point forward will shape everything. And there's no one to blame if it doesn't work out. No one to hide behind. Just you, standing in the vastness of your own potential. And that is terrifying. It's isolating. It's the kind of awareness that keeps you up at night. But it's also where freedom lives. Because once you accept that loneliness, once you stop waiting for someone to save you or fix you or complete you, you realize something profound. You don't need saving. You never did. You just needed to stop abandoning yourself. And that realization changes everything. Because suddenly the goal isn't perfection. It's not about becoming some idealized version of yourself who has it all figured out. It's about presence. Imperfect, messy, human presence. It's about showing up for your life exactly as it is, with all the complexity, with all the flaws, with all the unanswered questions, and finding peace in that. Not the peace that comes from having everything under control, but the peace that comes from accepting that control was always an illusion, that life is uncertain, that you will make mistakes, that you will fail and fall and question everything all over again. And that's okay, because transformation isn't a destination. It's not a finish line you cross and then you're done. It's a process, an endless becoming, a willingness to keep evolving, keep growing, keep shedding old skins even when it hurts. And the beauty of that, the profound comfort in that, is this. You don't have to get it right. You just have to keep going. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. Honest with yourself about where you are, about what you want, about what you're afraid of. And when you live from that place of honesty, when you stop performing or pretending or trying to be someone you're not, something magical happens. You become free, not free from struggle, but free within it, free to choose how you respond, free to decide what meaning you make from your experiences, free to create a life that feels true to who you actually are. And that freedom, that authenticity, that's what transformation is really about. It's not about escaping your life. It's about honoring it. It's about recognizing that every struggle, every failure, every moment of doubt, they're all part of the story. They're all shaping you into someone capable of holding more, feeling more, being more. And when you look back, when you see how far you've come, you realize that the pain wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. The discomfort wasn't a sign that something was wrong. It was a sign that something was shifting. And the fear was just love in disguise. Love for the life you're trying to build. Love for the person you're becoming. Love for the truth that you are worth the effort. So here's what I want you to take away from this. If you're in the middle of transformation right now, if you're feeling lost or confused, or like nothing makes sense, that's not a sign that you're failing. That's a sign that you're doing it right. Because real change is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. And the fact that you're here, watching this, searching for answers, that tells me you're ready. You're ready to stop fighting against yourself, to stop waiting for permission, to stop hiding behind the story that you're not enough. Because you are. You always have been. You just forgot. And transformation? It's just the process of remembering, of coming home to yourself, of realizing that the person you've been searching for has been there all along, waiting for you to stop running, waiting for you to turn around and see them. So if this resonated with you, if something in this video landed in a way that felt true, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below telling me where you are in your own transformation journey. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear your story, because we're all in this together, all trying to figure out what it means to be human, to grow, to change, to become. And the more we share, the less alone we feel. So thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work. And I'll see you in the next one.